Welcome back to another episode on the podcast. And today we are exploring and navigating career choices, small vessels versus cadetship. So, in terms of getting into the seafaring sort of roles, we have a range of sort of options. There's the small vessels route, there's the cadetship route. We have also what we call experienced seafarers route and graduates route. And today, joining me to sort of go through the options, the pros and cons, is Sam Samuels again. Welcome, Sam. How are we?
Yeah, all good. Pleasure to be here again.
Brilliant. Every maritime journey needs to start somewhere, and you'll often hear me say not everyone takes a direct route up Mount Everest, and that there's multiple ways of sort of going and getting into the industry, with the view ultimately of getting what we call a certificate of competencies. And the certificate of competencies come with different disciplines, different levels, and in some cases different restrictions. And those restrictions are typically on what we call kilowatts, the power of the vessels. Okay, so the two we're sort of primarily going to look at within this episode is the small vessels route and the cadetship route. Hopefully try and provide some clarity, guidance, and first-hand insight into each pathway. So I'm going to sort of mainly look at it from the cadetship route, and we're going to leave the small vessel side to yourself. So, Sam, what constitutes as a small vessel?
Small vessel these days could be anything from a Coast Guard vessel, tugs, small fishing vessels, all the way up through to super yacht survey vessels. In fact, some of our super yachts these days are so big that they almost dwarf what we've got in the way of some of our major shipping in the deep sea world. So it covers all areas. So don't just imagine small vessels is small. It covers everything from the small tugboats, little ferries, all the way through to these massive super yachts.
And in terms of the cadetships, again, it's very similar. You're after what we call the certificate of competency, but this sort of route you're looking at sort of more commercial vessels. So it can cover things such as oil tankers, chemical tankers, cruise liners, um, again super yachts. But you do go through what we call a sponsored program. And the cadetship, as we sort of spoke about in the education pathways and career pathways, is a routine that is funded. So in terms of sort of small vessels, what are the benefits of doing a small vessels career pathway or going through that sort of education pathway?
Um, from a small vessel's point of view, you are not going to be committing yourself to a 3-year program, regimented and restricted within a college environment. With small vessels, you can pick and choose your career path rate. You can also choose or get a better choice of vessels that you want to train on. And ultimately, you can progress all the way to the top, but it's going to cost some money. So unless you're prepared to work at it throughout the years and use the money that you're making, and you will earn good money, you're going to have to reinvest that into your own career path. In theory, you should never run up debt.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing. It's that balancing act of you can go away, do some work on board vessels, earn the money on the yachts or wherever you might be doing it, and come back and do courses as and when it suits to get yourself up the ranks and so forth, and get your skills of handling, get a varied roles and fast responsibility with smaller crews quite quickly. Um, Again, small vessel sort of careers. What are the key courses or modules that you have to complete for the small vessels route?
Well, I can speak expertly on engineering. From the deck point of view, there is a similar pattern that runs alongside. Um, but the small vessel world at the moment, you require your STCWs, your sea survival, firefighting, basic first aid. They're all week-long courses which you will have to attend at one of the training schools. They're well advertised globally and within the UK. And then you have to apply for, again, a letter of initial assessment with a college, which will direct you on the route you need to go, the amount of sea time you need to obtain. They will also provide you with a training record book, slightly different to the cadet training record book, but runs along similar lines. And then it's up to you how you then progress into the industry. You have to find a vessel to get you to sea on. That's part of the biggest battle. And when you're on that vessel, you're obviously going to be working. If you're going to be working, you're going to be starting right at the bottom of the food chain. And then you're going to have to progress, and you're going to require at least 3 basic courses to get you on the way. Small vessel, what we call the Approved Engine Course 1, which is a basic diesel course, again carried out at many local colleges, both in UK and in Europe. You can then do the small vessel AEC2, Approved Engine Course number 2. Again, a week-long course in exactly the same venues that I mentioned previously. And then finally, you have to, at some point, have a 2-week small vessel workshop skills course, which involves you being able to file, weld, work on composites, and do some plumbing and general engineering. Those are the 3 basic courses. To get to the first level of qualification, which is the equivalent of the engineer officer of the watch on a small vessel, you have to do marine diesels, you have to do what they call Oxy 1, which are the auxiliary equipment, and then you have to do an operational equipment exam or course as well. Each one of those is running at about a week long. And if you work on an average of about £1,000 per course, yeah, and then put on your traveling and your living accommodation, you can see where the price starts to ramp up.
Yeah, but they are quite a popular route, and they maintain their popularity. Now, as the MCA does its cadet modernization and other aspects, it will be intriguing to watch and see how the small vessel world maintains its routes and its pathways, whether or not that's open for change. And again, if it does change or there are any tweaks, we'll be sure to put out an episode to try and support the transparency on those routes. Now, in terms of first experiences on small vessels and lessons learnt, again, neither of us have sort of been in the small vessel world as such. But have you got any sort of stories from other uh, people you've come across, or any of the students you've taught over the years, just to give sort of the learners sort of an understanding of what a life on small vessels looks like?
Again, small vessels, the industry is all about the money, not necessarily earning it, but when you've got an owner who's got a boat, whether it be charter or whether it be privately owned, um, they want results. They don't want problems, and therefore every member of the crew is going to end up working hard to deliver at the end of the day. And many cadets will, or many people come through the small vessels route, will tell you how hard work it is. Unfortunately, programs such as Below Decks paint the image of the industry in quite a poor manner, in my opinion. It's not like that. There will be a high degree of engineering required of you and adaptability. You're going to have to turn your hands to everything, and that will include working on the deck as a line handler, which some people are a little bit reticent to do to begin with. But my experience when I have worked on the slightly smaller vessels, it's nice to get up. It's nice to go and see what goes on the upper deck. But yeah, generally it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of time at sea. When you do get time off, obviously you've got a little bit more of extra finance to enjoy it. But if you're going to make your way up the career chain, then you're going to have to keep some of that money to one side to be able to pay for you to go to do these courses.
Yeah, and in terms of qualifications, you are going to come out with this certificate of competency, but the other subjects you'll have sort of certificate of completion within those key aspects. So Looking at the cadetship program, and again, we've sort of looked at it in some of the early episodes. So the structure of a cadetship is you will do a formal maritime academics, typically at a HNC foundation degree or a bachelor's level, depending on the route you come in on. But within these, you are a sponsored cadet through a sponsored company, or in conjunction with a training management companies such as Watermark, Jesby Maritime, for example, who are also Maritime Solar members, or Carnival UK, who again is more of the overall sort of shipping body for the cruise liners, one of the biggest in the UK. And you will go through a series of phases. So you do phase one, which is typically academics, then phase two, getting your sea time in, phase three, back to the academics, phase four, sea time, and then finally phase five. And typically a 3-year program. The benefits of this is you are going to get that formal qualification that is recognized, and probably more of the norm in terms of recognition from those on the shore side. That we're very familiar with the terms H&D, higher national diplomas, foundation degrees, etc. You'll get structured mentorship because somebody is paying you to be there. You'll get the support, you'll get the guidance. They will put you on vessels, they will arrange that. You'll get more international exposure to shipping. So you will cover anything from cruise liners to chemical tankers to cargo handling to plant operations, a lot. And I think the career progression pathways are a little bit more transparent. Again, within that cadetship program, they are sort of outlined. However, the challenges to a cadetship are going to be the longer term commitments. And although you don't have the financial commitment in regards to paying for the course, you have the long term financial commitment of going back to, and don't get me wrong, the bursary is better than having to pay for it yourself, but it's not the biggest pay in the world. So again, if you're slightly older or mature and you're looking for a way into the industry, you have to consider, can you afford to give up that financial powerhouse, as it were, and initial limited responsibility on board as well. So you are sort of seen as an apprentice, as a cadet, and you're expected to sort of learn from that. But I suppose what I personally gained from the cadetship that I probably couldn't on a small vessels route was the more gradual ramp up in terms of knowledge and responsibility. Whereas if you are going it down the small vessels route, you are expected to learn quickly and take responsibility quickly.
Yeah, and also you on a small vessel, you have to be motivated to drive your career forward. As you rightly say, the cadetship is a structured program, and as such, there are milestones within that program that you have to achieve and reach in order to progress to the next level. And if you're somebody who's just come out of school or new to education, and you need that bit of motivation from an external body like your training manager, they will push you. Whereas small vessels, it's all down to you. If you decide that you don't want to do a course, then you don't have to do it, and you can stay where you are. You can continue earning money. But as we see all too often, people they start off quite young, small vessels, but their growing up is very quick, and then they can see that there's opportunities to improve themselves, and then they really do focus.
And we do see a lot of people who will come and do the small vessels route, and they're quite happy doing that. But we've also seen people who have been on the yachts and the small vessels, and then they actually decide to give it all up to do a cadetship with the view of going back. There's no real true sort of pros or cons or do this one over that. It is a matter of opinion. So when we sort of look at the comparable transferable skills gained in both routes, the technical competency is very similar. The teamwork, the problem solving, the leadership skills are all very similar. I think it's primarily just about how you get there. So in terms of small vessels, your experiential side of things is fast tracked over the cadetship. However, the cadetship provides you with the formal credential and perhaps you could argue long-term progression, especially if you're looking for qualifications and looking to come shoreside, and they're probably more recognizable in terms of qualifications.
Very true.
So, what would you say are the key factors then, personally, for which route to take, choosing the right route for yourself or for someone out there? What would you recognize as the key things to consider?
I think you have to look at your own character, first of all. If you're somebody who wants to get into the industry, doesn't really want to make it a difficult journey, in the fact that you're going to have to do a lot of legwork, the one-stop shop of the cadet route is a lot easier. If you're somebody who doesn't want to be stuck in the classroom for a great deal of time, wants to get out, have a few adventures and live life, I think the small vessel route will encourage you. But you've got to have a personality that's going to get you employed. Someone's going to have to take a punt on you from day one, believing that you've got some engineering skills or some deck handling ability. Um, and you've got to be able to prove yourself very quickly. If you get onto a vessel and they think you're not cutting the mustard, they're not going to waste money on you. They'll get rid of you. And then your confidence will be knocked, and then you've got to try again. You may have just picked the wrong boat. You may have been unlucky, but maybe it's a clue to how you are. It is hard, and I think when people sit down and start looking at the financial implications to get all the way to get to a chief engineer or the equivalent, they realize it's an awful lot of money. However, that having been said, if you come in on the cadet route, someone will point you along, signpost you all the way along the route. And sometimes that's easier and it gives you a chance to grow up, become experienced. And then once you get qualified, then you can put yourself out to the small vessel market. And we get loads of cadets who move across into the small vessel market and are very well considered because they have that breadth and depth of knowledge and what we define as deep sea experience.
Yeah, and I think some of the key sort of factors to consider are, like you said, your own personal goals, your learning style. So we have had, I've worked with a few cadets who have been in. They've come through the door. They've already done some stuff at sea. They know that they know it's the journey they want to do, and then they hit the second, third, fourth week of academics, and then go, yeah, this ain't for me. This route isn't for me. The classroom environment, that back to 9 to 5 academics, and it wasn't for them, and they've decided actually to go back to the small vessels route. Family commitments again. The cadetship allows you a little bit more flexibility in terms of being shoreside for periods and then going away, whereas the small vessels route is very full on in terms of sea time. Um, Again, I think it's more expected for those at lower ranks. And I know quite a few of the vessels actually operate where you live on board and you take your annual leave to go home, rather than rotations. Travel ambitions, as you mentioned, and the financial considerations as well. I think the other things in terms of self-assessing where you are, how adverse you are to risk, particularly financially. And you can look at that both ways. So the risk of small vessels is obviously you can make a lot of money, but you've got to spend a lot of money to keep going. The risk of cadetships is it won't cost you a lot of money, but you're not going to earn a lot of money. So there's quite an adverse sort of way. Patience. So you can do the small vessel route quite quickly, but the offset of that is an awful lot of time off, money lost, and money spent. Whereas the cadetship, you're going to get to the end goal potentially quicker and to the unlimited Series C. However, it is going to take you three odd years.
Can I just give you an example? And we talk about people we know. We had a cadet who joined us. He was an Australian. He'd served in the military over in Australia. He'd left the military. He'd gone to work on small vessels, and he realised exactly that it was not going to be a quick route, and he made a decision to sacrifice 3 years in order to get his cadetship. He got his cadetship. He then decided to stay on the larger vessels, and in fact, he went to cruise liners. But by that time, he was married. He had a child, and he realised that for him, 3 months away at a time was not for him. So he's now moved back into the small vessel world, because he had experience and knowledge. He could really choose the boat he wanted to go on. and so now he works on very short periods of time away. And yes, his financial return isn't the vast, but it's certainly better than where he would have been if he'd stayed on cruise liners and what have you. And he's quite a success story, really.
Yeah, and I think, and it goes back to what you mentioned a little bit previously as well, and what some of our other cadets have mentioned in the cadet diaries is it depends on your career ambitions. Not only do you want to climb the ranks quickly, but also do you want what are your ambitions in terms of coming shoreside? So again, if your goal is to get to that top ticket chief engineer or captain very quickly, the cadetship will open up the academic pathways for that to occur. You get your exemptions, etc., which are recognised for you to not have to sit the management level exams. If you went through the small vessels route, and it could drive you to the higher ranks quite quickly. But in return for that, there is an offset of it's a big commitment for a long period of time. Whereas the small vessels route, again, it's going to take you longer to get there, but I think it is deemed a little bit more of the small vessel sort of market, a little bit more of the showcase, would you say?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So as we sort of mentioned at the start, there are alternative routes. So hybrid and sort of alternative pathways. So there are opportunities to combine small vessels experience with formal cadetships or vocational training, which leads us into this idea of experiential routes, experienced seafarer, and what we call the graduate programs. Can you just sort of give us a brief overview of what those two look like?
Our experience of experienced seafarers normally will deal with people from overseas. There's not a great market within the UK for students to join vessels as motormen and oilers. We don't see it advertised in the same way, whereas overseas, um, India, Philippines, there are lots of cheap labor in many respects, and so vessels will take these people on as just general hands-on. But in our experience, they're very skilled people by the time they come to join us. They're classed as experienced seafarers. In order for them to progress onto the cadetship route or the tail end of the cadetship route, they do have to have the academic qualifications. There are many places where they do distant learning packages that you can do. You can do it when you're at sea. And again, regrettably for these guys, they're not very well paid, but they do fund themselves to get these academic qualifications. And then finally, once they've got that, obviously they've got sufficient sea time from being at sea. Then they have to do the MCA workshop skills course and the final, currently with the IARMY exam. That is going to change in the near future. They will have to do an HND, not just some academic qualifications, but they will still have to sit whatever is deemed as the IAME exam at the end, and an oral board with an MCA examiner. So it's challenging, it's tough, but again, it's rewarding when you see them coming through. We've had quite a few coming through, and again, regrettably, for the majority of them, they're not sponsored, so they do run up quite a bit of debt. But once they've got the COC, they have kudos. They have a UK certificate of competency, and that kudos will give them an opportunity to go and work on a wider variety of vessels.
Yeah, and the graduate route in terms of what that looks like. So that's typically you've got a high level qualification in an alternative field. It's mapped across and the gaps are recognized with a view then to fill those gaps academically and get the sea time in the TRB.
Yeah, you have to do they send you away for 12 months to get your sea time. You have to get nine months at sea. And then you have to have 3 months of workshop time, which will give you 12 months of workplace experience. And again, exactly the same as everybody else. You then have to sit an IARMY exam and an oral exam in front of a surveyor.
Yeah, and that's primarily for the engineering side. The deck route, they have similar options, don't they?
Yeah, deck route. In all of these things, there is a similar pattern. What I would say as a word of caution, we see it so often when we do open days. Everybody wants to be a decky, and even in the small vessel world, everybody wants to be the captain of a vessel. We see hundreds and hundreds of people coming through to get their qualifications for the small vessel world. Even for the cadetship, it's still big. And so you've got to have something different. You might have the academic qualification, you may have the technical qualification, but you've got to have a personality that is going to sell and people are going to buy into.
Yeah, and I don't think things like age or anything like that should be a barrier in which decision you make. You know, both routes are viable, all four routes are viable. I think you just have to be dependent on what you're after. So obviously, if you're after flexible training, you need to be looking at sort of the small vessels route. And and again, adult learners, we're going to do an episode on adult learners and career changes, and we're going to have a gentleman called Michael Hawkins on it in the next couple of episodes, and we're a big fan of Michael, aren't we? And what he's said, he's a good lad. He's a real example of the success you can get from adult learning. And again, your age shouldn't be a barrier. We've seen all sorts of cadets at all sorts of ages coming through. And what was the oldest cadet you've seen?
59.
59. So, and again, when I was a cadet, we had a 50-year-old on our course who was coming from being an accountant and over. So again, you do see it, and they shouldn't be the barriers. So it depends what you're after. Think about the flexibility, obviously the finances. What can you afford to give up? What time restraints you have? Are you after getting it done and dusted and sort of consistency in terms of the education and a journey, or are you after bits and bobs? So definitely sort of consider those type of things. So um,
Can I just say we're talking about this. If you're looking for information, the thing to do is to go to the government website and type in your search for small vessel training, something along those lines. Because what the government do is they produce what we call, or the Maritime Coast Guard Agency will produce these notifications called M notices, and they produce a raft of M notices which detail this down to the letter. There will be flow charts of the qualifications you require. They're very I wouldn't say hard to read, but they're quite in depth. They take you around the houses and they refer you to other elements. So please engage with those. Or failing that, talk to one of the training providers and hopefully they will point you in the right direction.
yeah, and there's websites such as Careers at Sea you can go to. You can go to quite a lot of the sponsoring companies' websites. So Watermark, Just Be Maritime, for example, who have landing sites on the information, and of course our websites. There are those aspects. So just to bring this to sort of the close, Sam, if you could give one piece of advice to someone choosing between small vessels and cadetships, what would it be?
Do it on your personality. If you need someone to kick you, do the cadet route. If you're self-motivated and driven, go down the small vessel route.
Yeah, that's a really good bit of advice. And I think from my point of view, my advice should be don't be, no matter which route you pick, don't think age or your academics or whatever is a barrier, because either way, you're going to have to work hard. So I think that's what I would put forward. So, just to summarize, that there is no one size fits all pathway. The best journey that you're going to pick is the one that's aligned with your passion, your skills, your ambitions, and your own sort of pathway. There's no shame in either way. There's no overall positives in either way. Every sort of discussed, it's all about what your end goal is, what you're trying to achieve, and where you're trying to go. So, as Sam mentioned, please do your research, seek mentorship. There's very few people who will turn you away if you ask them for advice and guidance, and make your decisions. Make sure your decisions are an informed one, and don't go in blind. So we hope that this episode's been useful for those who are considering a route into the maritime industry from a seafaring point of view, and covering the differences between the small vessels market in terms of training and the cadetship. And as always, if anyone would like to donate to our charity of the year, please do just go to our website, www.britishmaritime.co.uk/podcast. And at the bottom, you can see a link to donate to our charity of the year. And for those of you listening on YouTube, just go to the channel and in the description, and there's links there too. And that just gives me the final pleasure to say thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.